Headlines from an African perspective.
More than 40 people, including children, were brutally killed during a nighttime church gathering in Komanda, Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, an attack carried out by the Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF. A new report by Human Rights Watch highlights the scale of the atrocity, the failure of nearby military and UN forces to respond in time, and the growing insecurity across the region. To help us unpack the findings and what they mean for civilians on the ground, we are joined by Clémentine de Montjoye, a senior Great Lakes researcher at Human Rights. Good evening.
Good evening.
Your report details of the brutal attack in Komanda. What are the key findings from your investigation?
Yes, thank you for having me. So, Human Rights Watch just published a new report today documenting the horrific attack by the ADF, the Allied Democratic Forces, in a town called Komanda in Ituri province of Eastern DRC. What we found was that fighters arrived late on the 26th of July during a weekend when worshippers had gathered for religious celebration over the course of the Saturday and Sunday. A number of them were sleeping on the compound of the parish where the celebrations were taking place. The fighters attacked a number of civilians and residents of the town of Komanda, set fire to houses and kiosks, and also proceeded to attack the building where people were sleeping, leading to a very high number of civilian casualties. We were able to interview some residents as well as witnesses and survivors who described the attack and the horrific details of how people were killed. And unfortunately, as you said, more than 40 people lost their lives, and over 30 have reportedly been kidnapped, and a number have been injured and are currently being treated.
So I would suppose that in verifying the information with regards the number of casualties and abducted children, you spoke to people on the ground.
Yes, we did. We spoke with survivors and witnesses. The UN, MONUSCO, which is the UN peacekeeping mission in Congo, also reported that at least 43 people were killed during the attack, including 9 children. And ISIS, which the ADF has pledged us alliance to, also claimed responsibility for the attack, saying that 45 people were killed. So the number of people who lost their lives is fairly well documented now. The question is why the Congolese army and the UN peacekeeping force, which had bases very close to the attack and Komanda, didn't intervene in time. And this is something that came out in our interviews with witnesses and survivors who said that they were there was no intervention from either the Congolese or the UN force, that they all came too late.
What does the delay in the response speak to? Is it a lack of capacity?
This has been a pattern in these types of attacks against civilians in Ituri, especially. We did receive information that there were network issues at the time of the attack, but also we were told by survivors and residents that from about 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, gunshots could be heard, which would have sounded the alarm. But MONUSCO also pointed out to us that the ADF's kind of modus operandi is to start off their attacks silently with the use of blunt instruments and machetes instead of guns or arms that could alert them to what was happening.
In your experience of events in that part of the DRC, is infrastructure really under attack when it comes to network, or challenged?
When it comes to telephone network,
Yes, telephone network.
yeah, telephone network can come in and out in those parts. So, and again, this is something that residents of Komanda did flag with us, but ultimately, from our perspectives, there needs to be an investigation by the Congolese government and MONUSCO. A Congolese military source did tell us that an investigation had been opened, and we're calling for it to be urgently completed and for its findings to be made public. And then there needs to be lessons learned from what happened, and we need to see Congolese authorities, and with MONUSCO's assistance, adopting measures to re-establish trust with civilians. Making findings of their investigations public would be one step towards that, and also reinforcing early warning networks that would allow to promptly respond to reports of armed group activities and movements in the area. This is also something that came out in our interviews, and generally in the days after the attack is a lot of frustration at the lack of proper preparedness and response to intelligence about the armed group's activities.
Now, how does this massacre reflect the wider security challenges in Eastern DRC?
Unfortunately, it really highlights the toll that civilians have to pay for the insecurity that prevails in this part of Eastern DRC. The ADF is one of a number of armed groups that has been committing atrocities against civilians. The Congolese government did impose martial law in North Kivu and Ituri in 2021 to attempt to end insecurity in these two provinces, but according to our own research and a number of Congolese organizations as well, martial law has failed to curb abuses against civilians, and in fact enabled the military and police and gave them broad powers to curtail freedom of expression and suppress demonstrations with lethal force, and arbitrarily detain and prosecute activists, journalists, political opposition members. So the response can't really...
Yes, you can continue.
No, it's just to say the response has been inadequate and has not successfully curbed abuses against civilians, as this latest massacre has highlighted.
What would be the implications then for the ADF's link to ISIS in terms of security in that part of the region?
So the ADF has pledged allegiance to ISIS, but the current ties between the two armed groups are not entirely clear. There's much that's still not known about how those two armed groups operate together, but the ADF's modus operandi has been to attack places where, to attack civilians, and unfortunately, because of their way of operating, it's been very difficult to curb their abuses. So we've seen them in recent years implicated in scores of killings and abductions across North Kivu, and more recently in Ituri. And you may remember that the Ugandan military launched a joint military campaign with the Congolese Armed Forces back in late 2021 called Operation Shuja. However, according to UN reports and also security experts, that joint deployment has only pushed the ADF further from strongholds near the Ugandan border, further into Ituri and North Kivu provinces, and that operation was triggered by the terrorist attacks that happened in Kampala a number of years ago.
How do you think regional and international organization can assist in the protection of civilians?
Well, like I said, there needs to be proper early warning networks and a strengthening of consulting with communities and civil society groups about their protection needs. For that, there needs to be trust between local communities and the Congolese army and MONUSCO, the peacekeeping force. There needs to be also efforts to hold perpetrators accountable for these killings, which could amount to war crimes, which would again be a step towards re-establishing trust towards the UN peacekeeping force and the Congolese government. But finally, we're also calling on the African Union and the Security Council at the UN to have a credible strategy when it comes to addressing the security crisis in the east, which isn't just contained in Ituri and North Kivu, but also across other parts of North Kivu and South Kivu with the M23 conflict that is ongoing, which is supported by the Rwandan army.
And finally, Clementine, in what ways can the local community and civilians collaborate in building trust and resilience?
Well, I think, ultimately the duty is on the government here. They have a duty to protect civilians and ensure justice for victims of these atrocities. And the international community can provide support to the Congolese government on that. But I think what many of the people that we've been speaking with would like to see is more responsiveness from the part of those who have a duty to protect them. And that means intervening and responding when security threats, not only after security threats have risen, but also preempting them through intelligence gathering and preemptive measures.
Clementine, thanks very much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was Clémentine de Montjoye, Senior Great Lakes Researcher at Human Rights Watch, helping us unpack the recent massacre in Komanda, Eastern DR Congo.